Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, as I record this episode, there is a huge interest in the world of blockchain, NFTs and cryptos again. Crypto winter is officially over, alt season is open, and whales are making vast sums of money at the expense of new people entering the space. But the decentralized future that we were sold was supposed to offer something different, change society for the better, and help people win together and retire that everyone out for themselves mentality. So it does worry me a little bit that many will get blinded by making loads of money and not spare two thoughts for the people that they're leaving behind. So when I read that today's guest is focusing on building something that is helpful, supportive, aimed at serving the many, not the few, and using technology to create something where we can all win together, that was something that I had to find out more about. And Tomer Afek, the CEO and co-founder of Spacemesh, is going to join me on the podcast today. And for those of you that don't know, Spacemesh is a fairly mined programmable cryptocurrency platform that is powered by a novel proof of space-time, POST. So ultimately, Spacemesh is a free open source software that aims to become a core internet protocol for blockchain computation. So buckle up and hold on tight so I can beam your ears all the way to Israel, where we're going to learn more about the story of Spacemesh and the social meaning that the platform was built on, and much more. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thanks for having me on. My name is Tomer, and I am an Israeli. I live in Tel Aviv most of my life. Not a young guy. I'm almost 49 years old. And I have been, for the vast majority of my career, a venture capitalist. I've been investing in young entrepreneurs. After doing that for a decade, I've grown tired and decided I want to do something with my own hands. Glad I did that turn, because it turned out that it's much more my thing to work with people. And I have left the VC to become co-founder and CEO of a company which I successfully sold 4 years later for a whole bunch of money and became quite wealthy. And at that point, I was contemplating what's next for me. And when I read the Satoshi Nakamoto white paper, it became clear that this is the domain I want to delve into. And I ended up with my co-founder, Aviv Eyal, starting Spacemesh, which is something I assume we'll talk much more about.
And I absolutely love that story, especially because before we started recording today, we were both talking about what we're passionate about. And it's not money, it's about making a difference and working together, and especially the role that technology plays in bringing people together rather than dividing them. So I love how you've come full circle. And I think it was back in 2019, I did speak with Spacemesh co-founder Aviv, but obviously several years have passed since then, and the world is now a very different place. And for people hearing about you for the first time, Spacemesh is a fair block mesh operating system designed to run general purpose smart contracts at a web scale. But just to set the scene, can you bring everyone listening up to speed by telling them what Spacemesh is and the problems that you set out to solve right from the outset?
Both Bitcoin and Ethereum have used proof of work as means of establishing consensus for the vast majority of the time. Ethereum is about to transition to proof of stake. And proof of work is doing a good job from a security standpoint, but it's got some evident disadvantages, being the cost, and more importantly than, say, the electricity, is the fact that younger generation cannot join this via mining from home. The barrier to mine Bitcoin are too high. And as a result, if I am 20 years old what is Bitcoin for me? Bitcoin is something like I need to gamble on money that I don't have. So Bitcoin is nothing for me. That there's no something that is appealing for me. And in Spacemesh, we aim to solve that problem and sustain this ability to mine from home with your home PC. And regardless of how big the protocol becomes and how many whales are in it, we remain open to that option of a leopard in a basement, basically being able to mine, join the network via mining from home with his home PC. I think to many degrees, this was the Satoshi Nakamoto original vision, magic internet money that everybody can mine from home. I think sadly the mining industry has got industrialized, and in that sense, it's no longer available for the younger generation. And I think that the Gen Z's absence from the blockchain revolution is quite evident, and I truly aim to fix that by allowing them to mine from home. And I think the one important question which one would want to know before investing more time and energy into this protocol is, why would I basically mine Spacemesh? And the short answer is that you are guaranteed to get your precise fair share of the reward against the storage that you are committing. So if you will commit 2 gigabyte, you will get your fair share against that 2 gigabyte, guaranteed, no matter what the other players will do. And I think that's the optimal promise one can hope for from a protocol. This isn't true in protocols like proof of work, where by spending $10 million upfront, I'm now able to buy myself some advantage, which will pay up non-linearly. Okay, so just to wrap up my last sentence here, it's very much fair to buy 10 or 20 or 40 lottery tickets. There's nothing wrong, for as long as you are doing the same exact deal 40 times. The point where it gets unfair is that by being able to buy 40,000 lottery tickets, you are able to bend the curve to your favor more than 40,000 times against the normal ticket.
I completely agree. And there does seem to be a lot of passion in the space again. There's no more talk of crypto winter and the death of Bitcoin and all those exaggerated headlines that we've both seen throughout the years. And now I think as we record this podcast today, PayPal are announcing accepting crypto payments for when you go to pay for items in the US. And I think the Reddit subgroups have gone through the roof, with 2 million people on one of the main subreddits there. And there does seem to be a big passion from Gen Z as well, especially with the rise of NFT, etc. But I'd love to go back in time. I'm curious, what's the story behind Spacemesh, and what was it that put you on this path?
Yeah. So as I said, I was inspired by the Satoshi Nakamoto white paper, and I've used my VC connections, quote unquote, to explore who are the dominant cryptographers in Israel, or that have once been in Israel, and so forth. And I've came across the name Professor Moran, and some of the smartest people I've ever met refer to Professor Moran as a genius. So if they think he's a genius, and I think they're a genius, so there's something transitive in this. And Professor Moran was just wrapping his postdoc in Harvard at the time, and I went to meet him, and he explained to me what he's working on. And I asked him, do you mind that we take this commercially? And he said no. So there's a lesson here, I think. Sometimes the most valuable things in life are just there for you to recognize them and approach. And so we did. This became, we added Dr. Ido Bentov, who is a famous cryptographer from Cornell. And the four of us, Aviv Eyal, myself, Professor Moran, and Dr. Bentov, started to explore how we can address this improving Bitcoin. And idea of proof of space or proof of space time has been something that Professor Moran has been working on for the past decade. And he is basically the inventor and the original thinker of this consensus scheme. And with Dr. Bentov, we've added this idea of a tortoise and hare. So it's rather than a canonical chain, it is now a mesh where several hundreds of transactions could be created simultaneously without a necessity for them to be. There's no leader election. That's what I'm trying to say. It's a raceless protocol, so we don't compete. And this makes things a whole lot nicer and more less wasteful. That's the main point here. We don't need to work as hard as possible all the time just in order to not lose money. And as someone who used to mine Bitcoin at home until it became non-profitable and I lost money as a miner at home, until I had to really, close down my operation. This is something that's been top of mind for us, how to avoid this issue, how to remain. One sentence I hope the listeners will take away from this is that the reason this is so important is because of decentralization. So ultimately, if 1 million people start to mine Spacemesh, they will decide when they want to pull out. So for as long as they choose to stay, we have 1 million different miners. And the ability of a bigger whale to come in, make a muscle, like a squeeze, and essentially price out a whole bunch of home miners, this is the enemy of decentralization, as it replaces a whole bunch of sparsed smaller miners with one huge entity. And if we are to build something that is 2 orders of magnitude more decentralized than anything that exists today, we had to make sure that ability to make a muscle, being willing to spend money, even lose money just for the sake of pricing out smaller miners, then this kind of endeavor is not helpful in Spacemesh. Actually, the contrary is true. If a whale is trying to accumulate more coins, what he's doing effectively is increasing the price of the coin. And if the protocol used to pay only $50 a month for its miners, and this wasn't enough money for you, now as a result of the coin increase, now the protocol is paying $200 per month. Now it's already interesting enough for you as a home miner. And many home miners join and essentially counter the whale's effort to accumulate large share.
And that's one of the reasons I invited you on the podcast today, because your passion really comes through. And whenever I speak to anybody in the industry, I immediately learn that it's not about whales, Lambos, trips to the moon, pool parties in Bora Bora. It's about making a difference with this technology and creating meaningful change that benefits everyone. So I've got to ask, was social meaning implications for future generations a big motivation for you? Because I presume it really does.
That's like 95% of what I think about.
Yeah.
And to be frank with you, I've spent a whole bunch of time talking with Gen Zs, and it's not a pretty sight. A lot of them are extremely depressed. A lot of them feel they have no way, absolutely no way of making any dent in this world, and they might as well, watch Netflix and eat McDonald's. And being alone, atomized against 8 billion other, agents in an adversarial economy, that's a big part of this. And it doesn't have to be that way. I think younger generation can start off in collaborative efforts and experience the feeling of winning together. And as a result of this real friction, they will find out in real time, like discover what is their true calling. I think right now, a lot of us parents are sending our kids to search in their egos and tell them something along the lines of, you can do anything, you can be anyone, you just need to want it bad enough, or something along that kind of, and that's, I think it's ran its course. And I think people are realizing that this is entirely not true, and I cannot be anyone, but I can be the best version of myself, and this can be the best way for me to enjoy my time. And we are spending all the time and energy that we have in Spacemesh under this realization that many millions of kids will, in a way, start their professional career with us. And what could be the ultimate, most welcoming, most helpful, supportive environment for you to experience, experiment, and find your true calling via discovery, as opposed to looking inside for a bigger high.
I absolutely love that vision you've got there of a helpful, supportive environment and a world where we all win together. For too long, it's been every man or woman for themselves. But like you say, if we all win together, that's the magic spot there. But as for Spacemesh, can you tell me a bit more why or how it will be more decentralized than other cryptocurrencies out there or other currencies out there?
Well, yeah. So again, the way the audience for the coin is the younger demographics. The reason they will join is because they've got nothing to lose by aiming to minus. So if you happen to have a PC at home with some free drive, you're in. And that's really all it takes. And for some, even like the more even younger generation, it's about the electricity, the little bit of electricity that this will cost is even paid by their parents. So I think for them, it's literally a riskless endeavor to try and mine these coins. And the guaranteed that you will be treated fairly, no matter how small, even if you join in via the very minimum hardware requirement, the protocol will remain fair for you through eternity. So those two things combined, they offer you a very different kind of invitation into the space, as opposed to gamble on money you don't have, assuming you can pass the KYC and all that jazz. Here is this very different offer. Download something as easy as downloading Messenger, and let it run. It'll accumulate coins, and you will, if you use those coins smartly, you will become an autonomous player. And I'm hopeful to also connect you with a calling, which is bigger and outside of yourself, for you to find both meaning and purpose in pursuing that calling and giving it your unique abilities. So again, we go back to this idea of finding one's calling via searching outside of oneself.
I just love the concept here. And of course, adoption will play a big part of your success. And for many people listening to our conversation today all around the world, they will be motivated by what's in it for me. And you've addressed some of those issues there. But for anybody listening of any age, what would you say to tell them if they were to ask, why should I join? Is that a question you get a lot?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I believe that the vision of preferring the many over the few and the focus on synergetic, non-zero sum activities within communities, within a particular group of people that is trying to win together, the exploration of what entails in this way of going about is what the next maybe century will be about. And I believe these new forms of collaborative creation endeavors that people join together and end up creating something that none of them could have envisioned and obviously not built alone. And these ways that meaning propagates inside something like a group, and so smart contracts and reducing the barrier to entry are two very important ingredients here. I believe that being able to join this without being a coder is important. And I believe everything to do with the artistic younger generation that constantly find themselves right now at the bottom of the food chain. This must change, and I hope that using Spacemesh, I will be able to introduce or open the door to those younger, more creative people that are right now outside of the blockchain, because it's like boomers' male toy, right? It's nothing for them emotionally or intentionally that speaks for them. This is mostly because of how Bitcoin has educated the market thus far, and again, we take a whole lot of purpose and meaning in trying to change that and make this accessible to more females, younger, more creative generation. And hopefully they are able to see the light beyond what they conceive as blockchain right now.
And I think I should also highlight that I think today at Spacemesh, you've received $33 million in funding. So how is that funding helping you move the company forward and bring that vision to life that you've created here?
I don't know where you got this number. This number is inaccurate. We've raised $3.5 million of seed and then another $15 million of, say, call it A round. This brings the total of money that we've raised to 18.5 million. Not because we couldn't raise more. There was hundreds of millions of demand. We chose this as a value statement. And we chose to raise the exact amount that we needed and not a dime more. And since you mentioned that you've been in touch with Aviv back in 2019.
Yeah.
Then yeah. So we've been working on this project for 4 years now. And everybody is very lean, very, we don't take high salaries, or we don't spend the money on luxury resorts, or I don't know, anything like that. This is very much about taking the time to do it right. And this is very different than the venture culture, which has like, probably 18-month cycles between idea to a product that is running in the market. And this has been 4 years in the making. And this is how you build public resources. You take the time and the caution to build something that is resilient and that can last, because many people will depend on that, at least in my version of the future.
And like you said a few moments ago, when talking to Gen Z audiences out there is little to smile about. And even for people of our age, we're bombarded with negative news about just about anything through rolling 24-hour news channels and newspapers. And just to try and restore the balance in the universe a little, what's the most inspiring aspects of Spacemesh and the future of this space that really excite you about, like you said a few moments ago, winning together and serving the many, not the few?
Yeah, so I think ultimately Spacemesh is a technology that will allow groups of people to build their own economy. If you don't like the economy, build your own. And in order for people to be able to grok what build your own economy encompass and what it may include, and how an economy is not just a container, but it can have a purpose. It can have something that the bus, okay, where we all travel, that bus tries to optimize something. So the entire economy can have values and can have other norms and other things that maybe your parents told us that will never change and will always be that way, and we're able to do it differently. And in order to light the imagination of the younger generation for building their own economies. We are already building one ourselves, which is about paying kids a salary in order for them to find their true calling. We are building this as a self-sustained economy that grows in circles and will be able to accommodate more and more, let's call them less privileged children, and allow them to sort of experiment and also at the end of the day ramp up to something they would be both autonomous financially and motivated, from a purpose standpoint to pursue, and being able to afford this valuable time to so many kids in the future by just building something on the basis of synergies and winning together. I find this to be extremely inspireful and also a good example of what a big-one economy can mean.
And so far, we've done a great job, or you've done a great job of setting the scene, sharing your vision, and helping people find their true calling and bring new users to the platform. All inspiring, but I suspect we will have members of your community or tuning in, just trying to find out updates, teasers, partnership news, or roadmap updates. So for those people that are already established members of your community, is there anything else you can share about what to expect over the next 18 months?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So I think it's not a big secret, sadly. Not scooping anything here. It's all out in the open. But the big update that is coming on May 1st is the second version of Spacemesh, which is the code that will launch in Genesis. And I believe that something like 4 months after that, Genesis will occur. So the 4 months that are between May and September are to be used to ramp up any kind of mining equipment that you wish to prepare. And Genesis is right now scheduled to occur in September. And I believe that if any of the listeners have some available storage that they can dedicate to the protocol, this will be a very profitable endeavor for them, and they should definitely come to spacemesh.io, join the Discord community, learn how to operate the miner with the thousands of people that are there, and potentially find a home in a new place. And my passion is that you will find new friends above anything, and that more kind of impactful relationships will be the anchor, right? Trust and something about winning together has to do with relationships and being better at disagreeing or arguing and staying good friends and all those things. So I invite everybody that wish to have both beneficial and meaningful endeavor to join our community and to participate in the dialogues.
And I was just going to ask what the best way of joining your community and signing up and finding more information. So it's spacemesh.io and the community's on Discord, is that right?
Correct. Once you go to the website, it is a brilliant place to start. There's a link to the GitHub for those who care more about the coding. There is a link to the Discord community. There is a link where you can install the testnet client. This goes for Windows, Mac OS, and Unix. So cover all the bases. And for those listeners who are not as technically sophisticated and thus far hasn't been able to enjoy this experience of making your own money at home, I think Spacemesh is the exact fit on that sense, and it doesn't require anything that, I don't know, a normal Word user cannot tackle.
Well, I think today's conversation is such a powerful, timely reminder, because I think right now there is an increased passion in the crypto and blockchain space, and everyone is obsessing about making as much money as possible. And I think just chatting with you today, it's so much more healthy just to take a step back, talk about serving the many, not the few, and how we can all win together and use technology to bring each other together. And that is something that I champion on this podcast every day.
Let me add one last thing.
Sure.
Which is interesting, with your permission. Do you remember there was an ICO bubble? And when they just invented this idea that you can launch a new coin and raise money as a result, and basically all the frauds and their sister came up and used that opportunity. And there is something about NFT that is a little bit similar in that sense. So even when you think about those primitives that will live on chain, I think regenerative business models are the true calling of those animals as well. And I definitely see the larger, more lucky artists leveraging this technology to cross-collaborate younger, more prominent talent. And it's a good time to be an artist, talented artist, because I think those individuals will lead the generous kind of change and not winning alone.
I completely agree. I think it's a beautiful moment to end our conversation on today. But I will stay in touch with you, maybe get you back on in the fall, see how things are going with Genesis. But more than anything, just thank you for sharing your inspiring message with us, everyone, today. And I'll speak to you again later in the year.
Brilliant. Thanks for the time. Thanks for listening, everybody.
I think it was Jim Carrey that once said, I wish everyone could be rich and famous for a day, just so that they could learn that it's just not the answer. And previously, Tomer had more than 20 years' experience across the tech and digital and financial industries. And also spent 7 years as an investor at Evergreen Venture Capital, one of Israel's oldest and largest VCs, where he led the company's internet and new media investments. What I'm trying to say here, he had a hugely successful career, made great money. But since then, his career has come full circle. He's learned that it's not the answer. And he's learned that making another 5 million is not the answer, especially after talking with Gen Z audiences and the despair and almost helplessness that so many are feeling right now. And that's something that he wanted to do something about. And I think it's such a nice change to not be talking about cryptos and Lambos, but the story of Spacemesh and the social meaning of the platform that it's built on is equally as important as the technology itself. Food for thought indeed, and a timely reminder when everybody's talking about finding the next moonshots. So hopefully you found it as valuable as I did. But this podcast is not about me, it's about you listening. And I want to hear your views, your insights, your expertise, your questions, whatever they may be. So please email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. My website is techblogwriter.co.uk, where you'll find 1,500 episodes plus the podcast I host with Citrix and Netgear too. But that's it for today's episode. So hopefully you'll join me again tomorrow. We'll explore a completely different area of how technology is transforming our world and for the better. So thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.